Kid wanted to laugh, seeing Thomas's spirit break as quickly as it did. As the begging soon returned to dreadful moans, she suspected that they weren't thin enough to slide underneath her mother's door. But they were. "What's that?" Junior asked, still wiping the sweat from his face and a little from behind his neck. "What is what?" Kid asked, nervously. "That noise. Don't you hear it? Listen." He silenced. "What is that?" "I don't hear anything," she said. "Sounds like nothing," Kid interrupted. "No, it sounds like it's coming from your mother's bedroom. Thought she wasn't here." "She's not." "Then who is making that horrible noise?" "No one," Kid said. "Well, who's no one?" Junior panicked as his hands palmed the opposite elbows. "It isn't the dying man from the woods, is it?" "It's no one," she claimed. "So you're saying that no one's in your mother's room?" Kid didn't answer. Even knowing how her mother told her that it was okay to lie to others, Kid didn't feel right being dishonest to a friend. She, however, couldn't help but smile at Junior's critical thinking skills that the doctor declared he could never have. "Who's in your mother's room?" June asked again, as Kid sat quietly as if he hadn't said a word. "If you won't tell me, I'll find out by myself," he said, bluffing. "No," Kid jolted. "Then tell me who it is. Is it the man from the woods?" "Huh? Is it?" "If you must know, it's my father," she said uneasily. "He's very sick." Junior stood up. "You don't have a daddy." "But I do have a father. Everyone has one," Kid said. "And you saying your father is in that room," Junior said, pointing at her mother's bedroom door. Kid paused and reflected a pitiful look, nodding her head slowly up and down. Junior shook his head in disbelief, slowly sideways and then quicker and uncontrollably until his dizziness expanded. Everything became a blur, as for the first time, he trusted his own judgment. "What? You don't believe me?" Kid whispered, as Junior walked slowly upon her mother's bedroom door. "Don't go in there," she warned him. "Why not?" Junior asked, with his ears pressed against the door. Soon, the moans on the other side banged against the wood and pushed him back. Junior got scared, as Kid knew he would. His stomach began free-falling into the soles of his shoes as his right hand fiddled with the doorknob. He stalled for time, hoping that Kid wouldn't call his bluff and confess to let him off the hook. But she refused to, knowing Junior hadn't much courage or heart for suspense. He shook the knob and looked at Kid again. "Last chance," he said, worrying. "You gonna tell me or not?" he asked Kid, all nervous-like, as he leaned his body up against the door to support his laziness. His weight shifted, and the doorknob turned halfway in his hands, nearly causing him to fall forward on his knees when the door flew open. Junior caught his balance barely, and before Thomas for the second time. Suddenly, his air became thin from the shock. "You told me it wasn't the man from the woods," Junior panicked, wishing he had been wrong. He could hear Thomas's moaning as well as Kid's footsteps that walked up behind him. "No, what I told you was that this man is my father," she clarified swiftly. Junior turned to Kid and saw her face turn a baby blue in an instant. Her eyes reddened, and he opened his arms. He hugged Kid securely like the friend he was, and the boyfriend she wanted him to be. Her head rested partly on his left arm that failed to totally block out a view of Thomas, whose dirty hands pressed against his rib cage as the painkillers wore off. "Hell is coming," Junior whispered into Kid's ear. She pulled away quickly and looked into Junior's eyes that had turned as red as fire. She could feel the heat, the discomfort, as she turned and walked away and into the front room. She tried desperately to take her mind off of things. She felt the need to breathe, and so she took in short sips of air and blew it out slowly. Her eyes searched the trailer for any matches left on counters that Junior could use to torch the place. "Hell is coming," he said again, an even deeper voice. He said it so calmly that it lit a fire in Kid's bones. His eyes rolled white. As he staggered behind her, his mouth began foaming in the corners. Kid could hear him coming. She wanted to run but refused to. Having decided when she was even younger to face every fear, she turned and stood her ground. Junior pressed forward until he collapsed in her arms. His weight buckled her knees. She didn't know what to do. Junior was in desperate need of a doctor, but bringing anyone to the trailer could be hazardous with Thomas there. Kid knew that she and her mother could be punished, charged, or worse, banished. Ephraim Graves was upset that his wife allowed meddlers into their lives. They were surrogate mothers, he felt, were doing everything in their power to split them up. "I'm doing this for us," Sarah told him. It was something he just couldn't understand. Seeing how she going to witness Grace's wake without him just made him look and feel alone. Maybe I should have gone, Ephraim thought to himself. But how could I, with everyone knowing that if it was up to my decision, Grace would have been buried several years ago? If he had to do it all again, and Grace was brought to him in the same condition, Ephraim knew that he wouldn't have done a thing differently. Deep down, he felt he wasn't wrong in his choice. His medical opinion was just that, an opinion that left room for a miracle. Ephraim turned himself to explore the possibilities. Thomas and God are working hand in hand to humiliate me. It was a thought that made Ephraim feel silly, insecure, and angry. Expectantly so, a consistent ringing sound quaked his ears. He took a few Tylenols thinking the noise would go away, but the ringing continued. He took more pills and drowned them with a bottle of communion wine that he kept locked in a cabinet in one of the private rooms. He finished the bottle and the ringing persisted to drive him crazy. And then he noticed that the phone on the counter was vibrating. He snatched the receiver and pushed it against his ear. "Yeah," he answered rudely, wiping the last bit of communion wine from his lips. "Dr. Graves? Dr. Graves, are you there?" Kid said. "Yes," he replied, collecting himself. "I need your help. He needs your help." "Who?" "Junior. He collapsed in my house." "My God!" Ephraim shouted, rubbing his head for clarity. "Who is this?" Kid Matthews," she said. "Junior's lying on the floor and his eyes are spinning in the back of his head. He's shaking." "Kid Matthews, huh?" Ephraim repeated, grinding her name in his teeth. "Enough with the pranks. Don't bother me again," he told her, slamming down the phone. Her ears caught the dial tone. She reluctantly dialed back. "Dr. Graves," she said. "Didn't you hear what I said? I'm serious. Junior needs your help." She watched Junior foam out the mouth. It was something she never had seen him do before. She had heard stories of him banging his head against walls and breaking things when he was younger, but never anything like this. "Help me," Kid pleaded. "Help my friend." Ephraim wanted to believe. He needed to believe. And so he did.